assume you'd be willing to submit to an expanded FBI background check that interviews your colleagues, accountants, ex-wives, former spouses, sexual assault survivors, and others, and enable them to come forward.
Senator, I'm not in charge of FBI background checks.
But you would submit to it and support it.
I'm not in charge of FBI background checks.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal.
Weird that Pete Hegseth, with a troubled background that includes accusations and settlements regarding sexual assault, would dodge a question on submitting to an FBI background check before running the United States military. And it's even weirder that the Republican chair of his confirmation hearing is completely against it being made available.
Both sides have suggested that they get the report. I know your colleagues have asked for it. Senator Thune assured me personally that he thought it was an appropriate idea. So I would ask, and I would say too, as a precedent, one of President Trump's appointees had similar, very complicated personal issues. The report was made available to all the members of the committee. We would be following precedent, and I ask that that be made possible.
There's been much discussion about this, and what I intend to do is follow the exact precedent that we've had for the last two hearings with regard to secretaries of defense. Not only Secretary Austin, but Secretary Mattis 8 years ago. And that was for the chair and the ranking member to see the report.
Senator Wicker's precedent is that DOJ nominees like Matt Gaetz with assault-ridden backgrounds are okay being vetted, even though Republicans fought like hell not to. But nominees for Secretary of Defense with credible allegations shouldn't. Not sure what happened to the mantra of personal responsibility, but I guess that went away when the leader of their party came out on the other side of 34 felony convictions without having to answer for any of it. You know, these hearings are nothing more than an opportunity now to see just how much Republicans are willing to ignore for the sake of Trump's demands.
Many of your work colleagues have said that you show up for work under the influence of alcohol or drunk. I know you've denied that, but you would agree with me, right, that if that was the case, that would be disqualifying for somebody to be Secretary of Defense.
Senator, those are all anonymous false claims, and the totality
They're not anonymous.
The letters on the record here.
They're not anonymous.
On the record,
we've seen records with names
Vets
attached
for Freedom,
to them.
Concerned Vets for America, and Fox News
One of your colleagues
working
said,
hard every day on behalf of
one of
my
your
mission.
colleagues said that you got drunk at an event at a bar and chanted, "Kill all Muslims." Another colleague, not anonymous, we have this, said that you took co-workers to a strip club. You were drunk, you tried to dance with strippers, you had to be held off the stage, and one of your employees in that event filed a sexual harassment charge as a result of it.
Senator, anonymous false charges.
They're not anonymous. And I'll just conclude and say this to the chairman. You claim that this was all anonymous. We have seen records with names attached to all of these, including the name of your own mother. So don't make this into some anonymous press thing. We have seen multiple names of colleagues consistently throughout your career that have talked about your abusive actions,
Chairman,
attitudes,
I think he's
words,
over
and
his time.
statements
He's
to
way
women.
over.
Quick, somebody shut that guy up. He won't stop exposing the extremely unserious nature of this pick to lead the Department of Defense. It's telling that all we kept saying was that the accusations were anonymous when the accusers aren't anonymous. But that's never stopped these guys from telling Americans that what we see right in front of our faces is an illusion.
You took over the Veterans for Freedom in 2007. In 2008, you raised $8.7 million, but spent more than $9 million, creating a deficit. By January 2009, you told donors that the organization had less than $1,000 in the bank and debts of $434,000. By 2010, revenue at the Veterans for Freedom had dropped to about $265,000. In the next year, it had dropped further to $22,000. You don't dispute these numbers, do you?
Senator, I'm extremely proud of the work me and my fellow vets did at Vets for Freedom. A bunch of young vets with no political experience.
So this guy, who obviously didn't dispute financially running that small nonprofit into the ground, who also wants to run the multi-billion-dollar military budget, only offers up how proud he was to run it into the ground. Not even a reflective thought about how he learned a lot from those negative experiences, just pride in his incompetence. But how about what he would do outside of being extremely wasteful while not giving a damn about it?
To be clear, are we going to abide by the Geneva Convention and the prohibitions on torture, or are we not? Is it going to
Senator,
depend
as
on
I've
the circumstances?
As I've stated multiple times, the Geneva Conventions are what we base ours, but what an American first national security policy is not going to do is hand its prerogatives over to international bodies that make decisions about how our men and women make decisions on the battlefield. America First understands we send Americans for a clear mission and a clear objective. We equip them properly for that objective.
All right,
We give them everything they need, and then we stand behind them with the rules of engagement that allow them to fight decisively to defeat America's enemies.
In other words, his America First policy would violate the Geneva Conventions if he thought it was necessary. Standards that include things like protecting civilians, aid workers, and medical personnel. But considering our endorsement and participation in the massacre of all those kinds of folks in Palestine, these are already standards that we regularly ignore. So far, Pete Hegseth is gliding to confirmation.
2020, then President Trump directed former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper to shoot protesters in the legs in downtown D.C., an order Secretary Esper refused to comply with. Would you carry out such an order from President Trump?
Senator, I was in the Washington, D.C. National Guard unit that was in Lafayette Square during those
Would you
events,
carry
holding
out
a
an
riot
order to
shield on
shoot
behalf of my
protesters
country.
in the legs?
I saw 50
as
Secret
directed
Service agents
to
get injured
Secretary
by
Esper?
rioters trying to jump over the fence, set
Again,
the church on fire, and destroy
You know
a
what? That sounds to
statue.
me that you will
Chaos.
comply with such an order. You will shoot protesters in the leg.
And that's why Donald Trump nominated him. The clear objective, since he lost the re-election in 2020, is to eliminate anyone that's unwilling to blindly follow his orders. And that includes utilizing the military to shoot and kill American citizens. Mark Esper was one of the few people that derailed Trump's anti-First Amendment ideas. This hearing did give Hegseth the opportunity, though, to flex the muscles that he regularly used during his time at Fox News and just blatantly lie about how the military is staffed.
Standards have been changed inside infantry training units, Ranger School, infantry battalions, to ensure that
Give me one
commanders
example. Please give me an example. I get you're making these
Commanders
generalized
meet
statements.
quotas to have a certain number of female infantry officers or infantry enlisted, and that disparages those women
Commanders
who are
do
incredibly
not have to
capable
meet
of meeting
quotas
that
for the
standard.
infantry. Commanders do not have to have a quota for women in the infantry. That does not exist. It does not exist. And your statements are creating the impression that these exist, because they do not. There are not quotas. We want the most lethal force. But I'm telling you, having been here for 15 years, listening to testimony about men and women in combat and the type of operations that were successful in Afghanistan and in Iraq, women were essential for many of those units.
He doesn't care that he was caught in a complete lie. The conclusion from the senators that'll decide to confirm him will be that Senator Gillibrand was just too aggressive and correct in a rebuttal to his lies. So poor Pete should be confirmed out of what he had to go through.
Very idea that you should have to sit there and answer hypothetical potential in somebody's imagination crimes that may take place at some point, and wouldn't that disqualify you if you were a murderer or if you were a rapist? Unfair, and I'm embarrassed for this behavior. But first, I want to say thank you for your strong proclamation, unapologetic proclamation of faith in Jesus Christ. I sat here and listened to your opening statement and thought, wow, this is a guy who in today's culture is willing to stand up and say the first thing is first, faith in Jesus Christ. And I was reminded of what Christ said in Matthew, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and these things shall be added unto you. You are going to have a great future as our secretary, and I look forward to that day happening.
That's Senator Kevin Cramer. And he's offended that a guy looking to run the military has to answer questions about his past, including reputable accusations of sexual assault and unnecessary explanations of why he's okay with torturing and killing innocent civilians, including American citizens. It's outrageous to him. But he takes comfort in the same guy delivering a standard I love Jesus mantra that magically makes all of his evil doing go away. You know, this grown-ass 64-year-old man said, "Wow, it's amazing that you'd voice your faith in Jesus Christ while also voicing your belief in indiscriminate murder of humans created by that same God." Yeah, this whole thing was embarrassing, but not nearly as embarrassing as the football coach that can't stop thinking about transgender people long enough to realize that everyone knows he's stupid and he's lying.
I met with a couple of generals this summer. Coach, we're spending more money on transgender restrooms than we are coverings for $100 million airplanes. That's not acceptable.